A mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. A mustard seed contains all that is needed to bring about the reign of God. Mustard seeds are tiny. They're no bigger than 2 millimeters in diameter. A single one would be very hard to see. The reign of God is hard to see. The mustard seed does indeed grow into a very large bush, like a tree. It is easy to grow and does well in lots of environments. In fact, where Jesus lived and preached, it was actually considered a weed. It grew in ditches and could invade people's fields. It often had to be pulled up. The reign of God is like a weed that someone deliberately sowed. Yeast. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast. Yeast is also tiny. It's actually a fungus. It makes bread rise. What it does is eat the sugar in the dough and expel carbon dioxide, which makes bubbles. The bubbles make the bread rise and make it soft. But yeast was considered suspicious by faithful Jews. They were told by God to eat unleavened bread, bread without yeast, when God rescued them from slavery in Egypt. It was not considered the most sacred thing. In fact, it was maybe just a bit unclean. And Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like yeast, mixed into bread by a woman. Women were considered inferior to men at the time of Jesus. So the reign of God is like something unclean mixed by an inferior person to make enough bread to feed a lot of people. Treasure in a field. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure in a field. We can all understand treasure. This is the Mildenhall treasure. It is a hoard of Roman silver that was found in 1942 by a farmer in a field in Suffolk, England. It is now in the British Museum. Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is like this treasure, but one found in a field that the person who discovers it does not own. That person does everything they can, sells everything they have, so that they can have that treasure. The reign of God is like a treasure you do not own, but that you will give up everything to own. A pearl. The kingdom of heaven is like an expensive pearl. Pearls are beautiful. I bought a string of pearls for my wife as a Christmas present for our first Christmas together as married people. We had no money back then. I don't know how I managed to buy the string of pearls. We still both love the necklace, mostly because of the memories of our first Christmas together. The reign of God is like a pearl that you will give up everything to own. There is very little evidence in the Bible that Jesus himself was particularly interested in starting a religion. I mean, there's some, but very little. What Jesus was most interested in and what he preached the most about was the kingdom of heaven. The words in Greek are basileia ton uranon. You can translate this phrase in a number of ways: the kingdom of heaven, the reign of heaven. Some scholars think that it should be translated as God's imperial rule. I like the translation, the reign of God. Heaven was considered at the time of Jesus to both be the dwelling place of God and God's very self. And sometimes in the Gospels, Jesus uses the phrase basileia tau theo, which means directly the reign of God. The reign of God, the reign or irresistible rule of God is what Jesus preached. Jesus wanted us to understand that this reign is here right now, coming into being right now, and coming into completion in the future, more or less all at the same time. It is the world as God intends it to be, a world of beauty, of harmony, of love, of peace, of dignity, of health, a world of flourishing. The reign of God is like being in God's very presence. It's like the peace that would come with being in God's very presence, surrounded by God's love, always, everywhere, and at all times. But this reign, Jesus taught, is not like this world. It is perplexing. It is not what we would expect. It is found in unexpected places. It might even seem strange or suspicious to us. It can even be tiny and unseen. But the reign of God from those tiny, weird, suspicious places and origins breaks into the world regardless of our expectations. It is unique. It is there. It is always coming forth. And the reign of God is so valuable that we should always seek it, dedicate our lives to finding it, and work with God to make it real. Just imagine the reign of God. Imagine what the world will be like. Beauty, harmony, health, peace, everywhere, for everyone. That is the world we seek. That is the world we want to live in. And we have the tools to build this world. They may be hard to find. They may be in unexpected places. We may be required to rethink our values. We will be required to change. We will be required to study, to think, to use our gifts in new ways to build this reign. It is not easy work. But we do it to work with God to make God's reign real, because that is the world we want to live in. That is the world everyone yearns for. My friend and former colleague, Dr. Kathleen Hull, took this picture recently while hiking in the mountains of California. It's a rocky slope where there is little water, where the rain streams down and does not soak into the ground. A place that seems too rugged, too hard, too difficult for anything to live. And flowers burst forth, like Jesus bursting out of his tomb, like hope bursting into the world, like the reign of God, not just possible, but unstoppable, if only we look for it, celebrate it, and keep working in faith for the flowers that will bloom, even in a rocky world.